So let's get started. I would like to welcome Paul Loete to the podium to give Illinois DOT's perspective. Mr. Loete graduated from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign with a degree in civil engineering before beginning his career with the private sector. In September of 2012, Mr. Loete began his career with the Illinois Department of Transportation.
Good afternoon and welcome to Illinois. So for my benefit, if you would please, those of you that are from outside the state, if you just give me a show of hands, I just want to kind of get a sense of the demographic here. Well, thank you all for joining us. So as the chief engineer here today, I'm going to be speaking on behalf of our acting secretary, Omar Osman, and he wanted to be sure, number one, for me to tell you that he regrets not being here, as you can imagine, and I think I'm going to talk a little bit today about our capital bill that was passed at the end of our spring legislative session. So with that big capital bill that was passed in Illinois, our secretary has been running around the state and generally has been double booked most weeks. So I told Arlene this morning that I think I'm Omer at least 2 or 3 times this week when he can't make it. So his regrets for not being able to make it. I'm going to spend a little bit of time with you here this morning and just give you a little bit of an Illinois perspective, where we're at, and what we're doing with our program, with our capital bill, and transportation asset management. I want to start by recognizing our staff that we have here today. I tell you, we are super fortunate at the Illinois DOT to have an outstanding group with John here in front of me, and I see many other of our folks in the audience. So I hope you all take a few minutes over the next couple, 3 days to get to know our folks. I tell you, they are experts in their field, and we're super proud of them and all the work that they do. So just a couple things on Illinois. We have the 3rd largest interstate system in the country with 2,100 miles of interstate centerline miles. We have 7,000 miles of national highway system pavements, and we have 16,000 miles of centerline miles altogether when you include interstates, NHS routes, and marked routes. So as we contemplate our pavements and what we're doing with our pavements, we categorize them into 4 categories: interstates, national highway system pavements, marked routes, and unmarked routes. We'll talk a little bit about how our asset management plan deals with those. I want to talk about our revenue situation. I mentioned the capital bill. You know, leading up to this legislative session, we've been having conversations over the last several years about the status of revenue, just like probably every state that you all represent have been having this conversation about, you know, not enough financial resources to meet the needs of your system. You know, we've all, familiar with the situation of, vehicles getting more efficient and the like, and, cost of construction and design escalating over the years. And, I just want to put that into perspective a little bit. Going into this FY20, we're in the fiscal year 20 right now, working into it as we're developing our multi-year program, we were contemplating some very difficult decisions as it relates to our federal funds, and frankly, we're in a position where we were, looking down the road in our multi-year plan, we would not be able to match federal funds in the 3rd, 4th year of the program. At the same time, our road fund balances were dipping into the red, so we had a very dire situation. And as you can imagine, that required us to make our program as lean as possible and to maximize the return on the investments that we do make. So we had 2 things going on. Number one was that the trend of the pavement conditions was decreasing. So you might hear over the next couple days, in Illinois, we call pavement condition rating a CRS, condition rating survey. So CRS value relates to the quantifiable condition of those pavements. So our CRS values across the system are going down. At the same time, the percentage of, and I'm going to talk just for a second about bridges. I know we're talking about pavements, but the structurally deficient bridges in our state were also on the increase. So we had bridges going up, we had pavements going down, and as you all can imagine, we didn't have nearly enough money to take care of either our roadways or our bridges. So what we've done from a strategy point of view over the last several years was investing as much money as we could into our bridges, because frankly, FHWA requires that if you have over 10% of your bridges on the national highway system over that are structurally deficient, you have a funding penalty that required us to invest more in our bridges and our pavements. So the condition of our pavements deteriorated even faster because of that. So, maybe a couple years ago, we started this paradigm shift towards transportation asset management. And, frankly, we recognize that there's a lot of states out there that are a little farther ahead of the curve than we are. If you haven't, depending on where you're at on this curve, what we're finding out is this is indeed a paradigm shift. We've always been sort of what we considered a worst first type of mentality when it came to programming our improvement projects. That is, the bridges, the pavements in each of our districts that had the worst condition got addressed first. And frankly, pavement preservation was not something that we contemplated a lot. Over the last couple of years with John and LaDonna and their teams helping us to kind of spread the word about the importance of pavement preservation, along with help from our partners at FHWA, we've sort of started to make this paradigm shift where our district offices are now starting to think a little bit more proactively as it relates to pavement management. So with this legislative session, I talked about this Rebuild Illinois program. Governor Pritzker shepherded through the most robust capital program in the state's history. That accounts to about $33 billion in transportation revenues that were generated from increases to the gas tax as well as motor vehicle registration fees. A portion of that will go to transit and rail projects, but about $25 billion of that's going to go to highways and bridges. So recently, just in August of this year, we had our final transportation asset management plan approved by FHWA. As we move forward with this new transportation multi-year program, we've been getting asked, there's a lot of questions that are asking of us, does that mean you're kind of going to abandon this notion of pavement and bridge preservation? And the answer is no. Generally speaking, what we've done over the last couple of years is we've contemplated a certain percentage of our multi-year program that's going to go to pavement and bridge preservation. We started off at 5% 2 years ago with the notion that it's going to increase over the duration of the multi-year program. With the capital bill, our sense is that the percentages are going to stay the same. We expect that it's going to come up. I think it's 8% in our TAMP currently, but it's going to continue to elevate. We recognize the need of contemplating the life cycle of pavements, and early investments in the asset will make the asset last longer. So with this rebuild program, not only are we going to be building transformational projects in the state of Illinois, but we're also going to be investing much more dollars into pavement and bridge preservation. So in addition to this rebuild program, we expect that it's going to be a much more aggressive. I talked about where we're at on the curve with asset management and this whole paradigm shift that we're going through. Even today, as of this morning, I'm having conversations with our bureau chief in design and environment that's contemplating projects that we want to put on lettings and how those projects are being developed. Just in August, July, sometime earlier this year, we put together a policy change that relates to how we're going to address transportation asset management, pavement preservation, and the like. And frankly, again, this is going to take some time. We recognize for the districts to understand that the way that they program their dollars, the way we do it in Illinois is our central office of planning and programming provides the district with a target on and then they decide how they're going to use those dollars to meet the overall goals of the department. And we've been really having a lot of conversations with our district offices about, you can't use those dollars as worst first, and it's got to be used for transportation asset management in general. And that is the biggest challenge that we've noticed on this whole paradigm shift. I keep using that expression. Just getting folks to recognize that investments in pavement early on. The other thing is, this whole notion of dealing with the public and the folks that are out there and asking the questions about, why you're working on this project and joint sealing this project when this other roadway is falling apart. And those are conversations that we've sort of enlisted our central office communication staff on. So we're in the throes of developing some parameters for which we're going to sort of do this statewide communications protocol to get the public up to speed on what asset management and investment in your assets is all about. I'm going to close with just mentioning a couple things that we identify as challenges as we continue to move along this curve towards a successful asset management program. And the first one is this management of cats idea, and that is just getting all of the stakeholders, and when I call stakeholders, I'm talking about our own staff, our people that are programming projects on a day-to-day basis, to start thinking more about this notion of early investments in assets makes them last longer. We have a lot to learn. We've done some things. We've done some pavement preservation projects that haven't gone as planned, haven't been as successful as we've hoped. The fact is, because we're early on in this curve, we recognize we're going to make some mistakes along the way. Our staff in construction has been in this mentality of pavement overlays and pavement reconstruction projects. We just don't have a lot of experience with preservation type projects. So we recognize we're going to learn a lot along the way. We hope that we can learn a lot over the next few days, not only from the technical speakers at this conference, but also from just sharing anecdotal information with you all. And finally, we do have some concerns about the industry and just the bandwidth that's in the industry. If you start to ramp up how many dollars we're putting into the marketplace with pavement preservation projects, right now we do not have a lot of contractors out there that can absorb all this work. So that is something that we're going to be watching with a keen eye. And then finally, I just want to say thanks again for coming. And enjoy your stay here in Illinois. Spend your money, buy gas, and have a good time. Thanks much.
Thank you, Paul.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.